There comes a moment in every entrepreneur's journey when pushing harder stops working. The exhaustion, the doubt, the quiet question, why am I doing this? Starts to surface. The problem is not lack of effort. It is the answer you were looking for cannot be forced. By the end of this conversation, you'll understand what actually creates clarity when survival mode no longer serves you. Hi, and welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast, where we feature life, health, spirit, transformational coaches, and spiritual entrepreneurs stepping up to be the change they seek in the world. I'm your host, Jill Hart, the Coach's Alchemist, on a mission to empower coaches and entrepreneurs to amplify their voice, monetize their mission, and get visible. If you're ready to start attracting premium clients without chasing algorithms or hunting people down like a banshee on a mission, head over to coachesalchemist.com and schedule your free client acquisition audit. It's the first step to building a business where your clients seek you out rather than you having to hunt them down. Today, we are chatting with Fran Tabor. Fran is an entrepreneur, author, and spiritual guide with nearly 5 decades of lived business experience. She built $1 million janitorial supply company from a two-bay garage while navigating cancer, financial setbacks, embezzlement, and caregiving. Fran helps entrepreneurs move out of survival mode and back into purpose, teaching them how to lead with gratitude, faith, and grounded confidence so their business reflects who they truly are. She's the author of Shh, It's a Secret. Welcome to the show, Fran. Great to have you with us.
Thank you very much. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
I'm having so much fun with your book title. I just have to say that right out front.
Good. Life is meant to be fun.
It is. It is. So, with that in mind, what's the most significant thing, in your opinion, as individuals we can do to make an impact on how the world is going?
First, it is very important to look at you, yourself, and where you are in the world. That so often we have the impression that the only ones who can make an impact are the great and the powerful, the ones with a huge platform. And we start by making an impact in our own personal lives. And it's only when we can go from there that we can make a difference. And I like to think of our personal lives as like a lever, that a lever, you have the fulcrum, and you can have a little tiny motion right here in your family, but that little tiny motion can have a big motion elsewhere. And we have leverage in how we can affect the world and others way more than we have a clue. And so
It's
never
so true.
underestimate the smile you give to the clerk at the checkout line in the grocery store won't make a difference. It does.
Makes a huge difference. I was having a conversation with my dad earlier about kindness. Kindness costs nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the act of love being
Yes.
portrayed out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You don't go up to a cashier and say, "Hey, I love you." But when you're kind to that person, giving them space to be themselves, that's love.
Very much so.
So I know you faced a lot of personal and business challenges, and I'd really like to explore kind of how did those moments reshape the way you listen inwardly and make decisions rather than reacting from fear?
Well, first of all, a lot of the challenges that I first interpreted as being things that happened to me, and I had to react to the slings of arrows of outrageous fortune, as Shakespeare so elegantly put it. If I was going to be totally and completely honest with myself,
Mhm.
a lot of those real serious problems were of my own making. And you do have to learn to be honest with yourself. If, especially for business owners, you cannot be reactive. You have to see where your actions make a difference. For instance, you mentioned briefly embezzlement. I tend to trust people. Trust breeds trust. Kindness breeds kindness.
Mhm.
But as the Bible tells us, you're supposed to be gentle as a dove, but wise as a serpent. Trusting is no excuse for setting people up for failure. And all of us have a different weakness. when I made it too easy to embezzle from me, I set those people up for a temptation they could not resist. And when I first discovered that had happened to me, especially when I realized just how much money it cost me, my first was blaming them. But I had to be honest with myself. I did make it too easy for them. Now, that's not excusing them, not saying that they should not in some way pay for their crime. But as an owner, I had to take a proactive attitude and make embezzlement more difficult in the future.
And I've been a bookkeeper in my life, and I have a sister who's an accountant. There, there are systems that you can set up, even in small companies, to
Yes,
keep things like that from happening.
yes,
And it takes not just like, in some ways, it's easy for owners to get lazy and
very
let
much
other
so.
people take responsibility for things that you, as the business owner, need to maintain responsibility for.
Absolutely.
And I've known a lot of employers who've been embezzled from. And
Yes.
and that's usually the reason why it happens is because they just like ab abricate or abdicate their responsibility
Mm-hmm.
for double checking, and they don't have a big enough company to have layers. Bigger companies, they have layers, and it keeps, the person that's signing those checks, it's not the same person who is double checking on the invoice or um, or handling the money as it comes in and goes into the bank account.
Mm-hmm.
There's just layers in there
Yeah.
that you can set up. And even as a small business owner, you don't want your bookkeeper doing all the things. Your bookkeeper can
Well,
do some of the things, but you need to maintain tight control over who's.
well, at for my business, at that point in time, now my bank has since changed what they do, but at that point in time, they sent back the copies of the checks, not the checks themselves,
Mhm,
and they were four across, and I forget how many down, but they were very, very tiny. I
mhm,
actually had to use a magnifying glass to see the checks. Well, I knew what
mhm,
the checks were supposed to be for according to the computer. It looked like everything was balancing out, but it turned out that my bookkeeper was altering the checks after I had signed them. And I, that time I had undiagnosed thyroid cancer. I was sleeping a
oh,
lot, and it was just very easy to not get out my magnifying glass and look at every one of those checks. And she figured that out. And like most people, she was sure if she just had a few dollars more, her financial problems would go away. And it started out just one or two checks. And well, after my thyroid cancer was cured and I had the energy and I sat down and I did a whole year's worth of checks, which at that point in time, I was writing about 120 checks a month. So
wow.
I did a whole year's worth of checks. Uh, that was a lot of checks. I spent all night doing it. And I could not believe how much money I owed that I did not know I owed. But a lot of that was pride that I thought, okay, I've been treating people honestly. I had very few inner theft problems. So I was kind of smug. And then when I found out I had fallen for embezzlement, my first reaction again was pride. I was so ashamed of myself for not having been more proactive and preventing it from day one. I didn't want to know anybody to know I had been that lazy and that stupid. And I went to the world of credit cards. Now, I had already wiped out my savings covering all my cancer expenses. I was a big girl. I had planned if I had a disaster, but I didn't have any extra reserves at this point. I went to the secret world of credit cards that take care of all this unexpected debt. And thought, okay, I could do that secretly. I knew I could have run down to my banker and he would have refinanced my building, but I would have had to tell him, yeah, I was one of these stupid ones. This was 2008. I thought I had credit cards at 2 and 3% interest. I maxed them out at close to $200,000, maxed out credit cards. They came back and they're between 15 and 29% interest. And I contacted them and they said, well, before you didn't need the money. So of course you were low interest, but now you need it. So then I went down to the bank, 2008, the banking laws changed. My banker looked at me straight in the eye and said, if I had come in 2 weeks sooner, in other words, if I had not been more proud than taking care of the problem, if I had not been willing to say, I made a mistake, a big one, I could have refinanced the building. As it was, the laws has changed. He said there was no way he could do it. He deeply apologized. So there I was with less income than I had had for years and owing so much money at such a high interest rate. But then I also ended up learning after talking to several other bankers that one of the most common reasons small businesses go out of business is embezzlement, and bad bookkeepers will go from place to place to place because people are afraid of saying anything wrong. And they just keep killing business after business after business. And my bookkeeper that did this to me always dressed very professionally. In fact, she was intimidating to me. I became a business owner years before because I had a physical skill. I did not have professional business training, so I paid for a bookkeeper, I paid for an accountant, because those were not my skills. And I do firmly believe you should know what your skills are. And that is where you make your money. That's where your time is valuable. And if something else is not your skill, you pay good wages to the people who have that, because otherwise you'd be doing it. And as if you're a business owner, like even a small business owner where you're self-employed and then you hire just one person, you don't think of that one person as somebody you're going to make money off of. You think of that person as an extension of yourself doing what you otherwise would not have the time or the physical ability to do. But I learned that pride is a very common cause of business failure. They, they say that pride goes before the fall. It almost did in my case. And I went through
But
a
you
little
came
bit of
back.
a tailspin of a depression. And at first I was going, oh, why did this happen to me? But the cure did not start until I looked in the mirror and say, wow, this was my fault. Yes, that person had a weakness. Everybody has a weakness of some type. Like the old saying goes, locked doors are kept locked to keep honest people honest. And I had
Yeah.
failed in my job doing that. But strangely enough, what really got me out of that tailspin and depression is I realized that the whole town has suddenly started looking just miserable. 2008, for young people out there, it was a really hard time to be in business. That in our little town, 2007, if you had approached a red light downtown at noon, that light might have to go through 3 or 4 cycles before it's finally your turn to go through the intersection. 2008, that wasn't a problem. There was nobody driving on the streets. The employment just plummeted. And I had always preached to others to have a good outlook on life. It starts with being thankful. Well, in 2007, when everything seemed like it was doing great, it was easy to be thankful. 2008, it was not so easy. But I am very lucky. I live in a part of the country with some absolutely gorgeous views, but every part of the country has its own kind of beauty. And the next morning, I looked out, it was a bright blue sky. The distant mountains had just a touch of snow on the top, and the dark blue underneath that made a nice contrast with the blue of the sky. And I suddenly realized how lucky I was to be able to see something so beautiful and have the physical ability to see it. And I started looking for a lot of reasons to say thank you just for being here. Thank you for being alive. And it's amazing, the whole process of finding something, anything to say thank you for. It opens up your brain cells. You start seeing solutions more than problems. And I was able to go into my shop and say, I have a new slogan for our business. We are going to be an official oasis of happiness. If somebody comes in the door and they look grumpy, we're going to give them an extra big grin when we say, Hi, how are you? And by the way, we never start out with, Hi, can I help you? It was always, Hi, how are you? Glad to see you today. Because it's kind of cool. When you say, Hi, how are you? In our culture, the instinctive response is, I'm fine. And it's really weird. Just saying the words, I'm fine, makes people feel happier. So even if they came in to complain about something, and guess what? If you deal with enough people in business, somebody's going to complain about something.
Totally.
You're not going to please everybody all the time. Don't expect to. But they feel better and they don't complain as hard.
You're setting them up for success. I
You're
love this.
Yes, you're setting them up for success, and that sets you up for success. Like Zig Ziglar used to say, you can get anything in life that you want as long as you can help enough other people get what they want. And one thing everybody wants is to feel a little bit happier. And a
And
smile does that for us.
it really does.
And being an oasis of happiness pulled me emotionally out of the pit I was in. Getting out of the money problem, that took a few years longer, but it gave me the emotional strength to spend those 5 years getting out of that horrible money pit. And it just
I'm proud of you that
better.
you did it though. It's really easy to get into situations and be like, to the end of the world, everything hates me. I
Mhm.
think I'll go eat worms. And just like
Oh,
to
yes.
sink into anxiety and depression when really it's just a problem that we have
Mhm.
the opportunity to solve. It's
Yes,
and nothing is always and forever. Things are
right.
always changing. And
Very much so. And even if you have to start over in your business, like this last business of mine, I had it for over 40 years. I sold it to two key employees, and they are taking it to levels beyond what I did. I'm very proud of them. They're young, they're ambitious, they're very excited about making their
I'm happy for
improvements, and they have been. But before that one, we started several businesses that, for a different reason, each one of them did not succeed.
Mhm.
But when you start a business and it fails, I call that business 101. You will learn
Very so.
more about what it means to be self employed or an entrepreneur, actually getting in there and doing it, than you will in almost any business class. Because relatively few business classes are taught by people who own or ran a business. There are some things that you want to know the basic rules of the game, but you'll never learn to play basketball unless you're out there dribbling a ball and throwing baskets. You'll never learn what it means to be responsible for your own life until you actually become self-employed or full-time, full powered manager or business owner or entrepreneur, until you do it, until you're in the game and you have some skin in that game. Not just some
I
skin, your
say,
own skin in the game.
yeah.
It
And
changes
you
everything.
always lose 100% of the shots you never take.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things I absolutely loved about having my own business is I was able to do things myself that would have been impossible in most other employment. Like when we started the business, we had two truck bays. Well, one truck bay was used for uh, backup storage, and that for the beginning of the business. What would have been the front office was our retail and repair space. The other truck bay we lived in. We added hot water so we could take showers. And while living like that, we had our first child. And I had her in a baby pack, waiting on customers, even fixing vacuums. It So I knew it was possible to run a hands-on active repair business and retail business carrying a baby, which shouldn't be a big shock because it's amazing how many people clean houses at home taking care of a baby. So when I had my larger building downtown, because by the time I had 20 employees, I had a much larger retail business. So we had grown. When the kids got pregnant, I said, you can bring your baby to work. And it worked. There was one point when I had three gals who took, they would have to clock out if they're going to go in the back room and feed their baby. And the rest of the time, they had either the baby pack in front or the backpack, and they were waiting on customers, stocking shelves, doing all kinds of things, selling cleaning supplies, demonstrating vacuums, demonstrating sewing machines with a baby on them. For a while there, we looked like more nursery than retail store, but it was
I
something
love that.
as a business owner I could do because I knew it could be done. And there was nobody to tell me that, hey, this isn't the way things are done. But I did that because I firmly believe that we don't have families to support our business. We work to support our families. And if you don't make your actions go with your rhetoric, you're telling a lie to yourself as well as anybody else. And we have to be honest with ourselves. And that goes with all aspects of our lives. And I can truthfully state that all of my biggest business mistakes were when I was not totally honest with myself, or when I let pride keep me from asking the right questions, or let pride keep me from admitting I'd made a mistake. But it's possible to run a business that is family supportive, not just family friendly, but family supportive.
I love that you didn't just come up with a nursery and stick the kids on ice
Mm-hmm.
someplace because that's a solution many big businesses come up with
Mm-hmm.
is we'll put them in this room and they can just be on hold until the parents can go and interact with them because
Which is better than nothing,
but
but
it's not the
it's
same as
no.
incorporating your kids into your life. I think the reason that part of the reason why our country is in the situation it's in right now is because we've required women to go get jobs. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're trying to be good parents. And I had this situation as well. So I'm not like pointing fingers at other people. You're trying to be everything for everybody and you're failing miserably. And instead of looking at the situation and saying, this isn't working and doing
Mm-hmm.
something different, we just double down on it. And a lot of people burn out and the kids, they don't understand how to do this themselves. They know that they don't want to grow up and have kids and raise them the way that they were raised because it sucked being a kid
Mm-hmm.
that was just, had to go to daycare all the time. That's no way to live your life. You're in a family because you want to be part of the family, which
Right.
is, at least mom and dad. I don't care if you have like two homes, but letting your parents be part of your life. I homeschooled and homesteaded for the last three of my five kids. That was the best time. My husband was gone a lot. He was a truck driver. But I was able to be home like all the time and we did all the fun things together. And
Mm-hmm.
to this day, when I interview people on this podcast who have kids, there's times when their kids will come on and it's just like, yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm. Much
I,
so, because it shows the kids are seeing mom or dad interacting with the world.
yes.
And especially for young families, uh, if you have a minimum wage or not much above minimum wage job, if you figure out what it actually costs to go to work,
Oh, yeah.
that it could be the difference between getting away with being a one-car family and a two-car family. That right there is a huge amount of money.
And
And
meals and
oh, home cooked
discounts
meals. Yeah.
and I, most people, most young mothers are paying for the privilege of being away from their kids.
Yes.
you buy more fast food, you buy
Mm-hmm.
it's bad for your health, it's bad for your
Yep.
kids, you're spending money on daycare, and your kids are going to end up sicker more often
Mm-hmm.
because just those places are breeding grounds for germs. It's like if you believe there's germs or whatever, it's a fact. Kids that
Yep.
go and spend a lot of time in daycare are sicker than kids that don't. And it's just like we're just like programmed to you have to work instead of
Mm-hmm.
doing the math and saying, well, does it make sense for us to work?
Right. Very
I've
much so. And I was very lucky that we had a home business to start out with.
mhm,
And that really cut down on our overhead tremendously. And money we would spend on maintenance, we didn't have to choose between the business or our home. It was all one place that we spent money.
mhm.
And our family was right there. It was just a much better system.
Yeah,
And
I'm over here shaking my head. Yeah, yeah, I'm in your corner, girl.
one of my pet peeves is that so many cities zone away from home business combinations when that was the tradition for 99.9% of all human history.
Mhm.
And they don't know the history behind outlawing home business combinations. And if they did, they would be horrified that people started zoning home business combinations away. It was a deliberate classist, racist decision because a home business is the easiest way for somebody who was on the lowest end of the economic spectrum to gradually get better and better and become upper economic spectrum. So if you're an immigrant with no money, if you came from a very poor family of any race, it was your route to become upper middle class and then even upper class. Many people became millionaires because they were able to have a home business combination. In fact, there's a whole book written about that, The Millionaire Next Door, and the type of businesses he talks about. A lot of them will have a separate location for their business in their home, but the majority of that type of business started out as a home business combination like we did.
Yeah,
And it,
it's
it's a great way to move forward, and it's a great way to keep family involved, and a huge advantage to a community with a lot of home-based businesses. You have a lower crime rate. Because if you have an area that is mostly residential with almost no adults there during the day, that attracts thieves during the day. And if you have an area that's mostly business and almost nobody there at night, that attracts thieves at night. Because wherever there's not a whole lot of responsible adults around, it attracts people we don't want around.
and when
And
you have families and kids
mhm,
all interacting in a
yes.
family business, kids learn skills much earlier
Oh, absolutely.
and they feel like they're contributing
Mhm.
to the family. Just
Yes.
it's like you have chores for kids because you have kids and they
Mhm.
need to learn how to be independent human beings and live in
Yes.
society. So you teach them things, but if your business is also part of just the way the family
Mhm.
runs day to day, they're going to pick up skills that it's priceless. You can't buy that kind of training.
Well, people talk about how back in the days when the majority of families grew up on farms, the kid was an economic advantage to the family. Then they'll turn right around and say, oh, yes, but the modern family, the child is an economic disadvantage, which makes
Mhm,
people look at the kid differently. You have a home-based business, guess what? It's like a modern farm. That kid is an economic advantage to the family,
mhm.
and he knows it. When my kids were 3 years old, I had them handling a pricing gun and pricing merchandise.
They think it's a game because it
And
is.
guess what? I could have done the job faster,
Mhm.
but they were proud of themselves because they were doing something important. And
Yeah.
how many ways can you make a 3-year old feel important and knowing he makes a difference in the family?
And when they start out knowing that they're significant and they're making a difference in the family, then they're more likely to make a difference in their communities and their schools
Mhm.
and the larger society in
Yes.
general. When we took kids off the farm and said, no, you can't let your kids do farm work
Hmm.
anymore, and there are laws about that.
Yes.
Um,
Unless
it's
you own the
horrible.
farm.
Yeah. It,
Mhm.
kids learn so much from farming.
Yes.
They learn how to like grow food. Interesting concept. We've reached a point where most people cannot feed themselves. They do
Hmm.
not possess the skills. They may say, well, I'll just grow a garden. Let me tell you, honey, just growing a garden is not that simple. You don't just throw seeds down and have a bountiful
Right.
harvest.
But it's a great educational experience for anybody, and
Mhm.
it lessons in patience. That the
Mhm.
tiny seed takes a while, but a small handful of seeds can become so many zucchinis you can't give them all away.
Yeah, we play doorbell ditch with them.
Yes. So, and it doesn't mean that the kids are always going to be perfect. That for both of my daughters, when they hit their teen years, it was as bad as my teen years. Hormones do things to you. And science
Mhm.
has proved that you hit puberty, your brain shrinks, and it doesn't go back to the previous side until about 21 for girls and 25 for boys. But as adults, I could not be prouder of how they've become as adults. And both of them say a lot of the experiences they had working in my business has made a huge difference in how they've been as adults. That
Yeah.
is that they learn things from that they just couldn't have learned any other way. But it doesn't have to be a full-time business. That just running a side hustle out of your home, that could be enough of a business that your kids actually see you working, interacting. Otherwise,
Mhm.
going to a job that the parent disappears and then comes back from doesn't really teach the kid anything outside of, well, if you're absent long enough, you can make money. But if you just have a small side hustle of some type, like even a garden that produces enough that you're selling things at the farmer's market, or like our local farmers markets have a lot of skilled crafts, and people will be making pot holders and table runners and uh, fancy custom coats and just a huge variety of craft items that they sell
Selling
at the farmers
eggs.
on. Oh, yes.
Do you have to take care of the chickens? And you have
Yes.
to collect the eggs. And you have
Yes.
to put them in the little packages. And you have to sell them. It's a
Yes.
great job for kids.
Yes, it is.
We used to have a goat dairy, and I sold goat's milk.
And your kids saw all the work that happened, and they
They were
figured out in a
part of the
hurry
work that happened.
that if you sold a container of goat's milk for $10, you didn't have $10 to spend. You had $10 to reimburse the goat feed.
Isn't that the truth? My
But
kids got old and I had to leave the farm because I couldn't, I was too old to like move the bales.
mhm.
It was like I needed the boys.
But that too let them know that, hey, I was important.
They
My
were
mom was
so
able to
important.
do this because of what I did.
Hmm.
And pride and self-respect of the good kind are so very important. And if you have enough self-respect of the good time type, it makes it easier to say, hey, I don't know everything.
Hmm.
And easier to say, I made a mistake, because you have enough confidence in the things you did right to be able to say, I did this wrong. What could I have done differently? Or what type of help do I need? And ask for the help you need.
So tell me a little bit about your book. Shh, it's a secret, which is actually the name of the book, by the way.
Yes. Uh, I wrote that book almost by accident. That one of the primary things that my janitorial business sold was vacuums. In fact, we actually started it just wanting to be a repair business only.
Mhm.
And it just kept growing, and people would ask us for more things. And because we're fixing, cleaning things, they thought we should know about cleaning. And next thing I knew, we were a full janitorial supply center. But I wrote articles for the VDTA, which at that time was a very going organization. Sad to say it's not now, but for a good 30 years it was. VDTA is Vacuum Dealer Trade Association.
Thank you for that.
And I wrote about 24 articles for them. I shared the information that was in these articles with a gentleman that he and I were writing novels together, because it pays, if you're writing a novel, it pays to have a critique group, even if it's only one other person.
Mhm.
And he was really impressed with the articles because he said there are several things in those articles that he was applying to his business. He specialized in doing fancy gates that we would have people move in from California, and they just could not conceive of not living in a gated community. So our local builders obliged them, came up with gated communities just for the Californians. And he did some really elaborate gates, but he used ideas in these articles I wrote for vacuum cleaner dealers to become more successful and more profitable. He said, I should really put all these articles in a book. And I go, well, that's for vacuum dealers. He says, no, if I can apply them to my gate business, they could be good for anybody. So I went through and picked out the 13 most popular articles, rewrote them slightly so they would be germane to anybody, and put them in the little book. Uh, I do have to do one brag that I'm going to brag about for one of the articles because it took me completely by surprise. I was at a trade meeting. This was in 2009, which your viewers could probably go, oh, that's a year after 2008. And most of the communities, 2009 didn't seem as bad because by that time we were used to it being bad, but it was still bad.
It's still bad.
It didn't start getting better until about 2010, 2011, and not by much. But he came up to me and he said, Fran, you are Fran, right? And I go, yes. Fran Tabor that wrote the great article. I go, what great article? The one that saved my business. Huh? I wrote an article about how when we go to come up with a business plan, people get it backwards because most people start out with, how can I make money doing this business? And in that article, by the way, I was writing to myself for this article because, like I said, 2008, I did go through depression. And I wrote this article partly as a message to me. The first question you should ask yourself for any business is, why is my community better off because I am in business? How will my business make my community better? Now, your community can be your neighbor next door. It can be 10,000 people you'll never see on the internet. But your community is your potential customers, the people you are going to be interacting with. Why and how will they be better off because you exist? And then in the article, I explained why a repair shop of any type, whether it is somebody doing clothing alterations, re-putting on a zipper for a coat that fits just right and you love, and you can't find another one like it, but all it needs is a new zipper, fixing an automobile or fixing a vacuum, or fixing yourself, like a podcast that gives you the right uplifting spirit at the right moment. Why you being there to fix whatever is broken will make the other people better off. So once you know why your business is important to your neighbors, then doing what it takes to make your business look worthy of helping your neighbors and showing that you take pride in helping your neighbors, you will do what you need to do. And he said he had never before thought of his little repair vac shop, and he had said he had a little tiny hole in the wall shop, as making a bit of difference to anybody. And he suddenly realized how much difference he made. And like for a repair shop, if say family's vacuum broke down and they lacked the time or the skill or whatever to fix the vacuum, they'd just throw it away, go down to Walmart or any other store, spend $100, buy a new vacuum, they're $100 out, and out of that $100 spent, almost all of it leaves the community, not to be seen again. Very, very little of it stays. Or they could go to a repair shop and say they spend $50 getting their vacuum fixed, or even $60 getting it fixed. There, that money that you paid the repairman, less than whatever he had to pay for parts, all of that's going to be staying in the community. He's going to be buying groceries with it. He's going to be paying rent with it. That stays in the community. Money that stays in the community gets recycled, makes your community economically healthier. Now that person has the extra $40 or $50 to take home with them. He has money to help his kids buy lunch at school. He has money to buy milk on the way home. His wife has money to buy something. Life is better for him. And odds are almost all of that money is going to stay in the community. The money spent repairing is very, very economically important to a community. Money just spent buying new depletes a community of money. And that's whether they're buying new from something online or buying new from a box store. Repair money is awesome for the economy.
I
And
think I would equate that with
mhm,
like local craftsmen as well. You know,
yes, very much so.
going to local fairs,
Mhm,
finding gifts that you can give later in the
absolutely.
year. That money stays in the community and
Yes,
local grocery stores.
yes,
Really important to support local grocery stores and local restaurants. There's
and
still some places where you can go out to eat
yes,
that are family owned and run. Support
yes.
those places because
And,
that's money that makes your whole community rise.
and nice thing about those places, like if you can find a local restaurant, and we are lucky we still have a few, you have to look for them sometimes, but they're still around. Is the people that work for them tend to be better paid than the ones in the big chains.
Yep.
And they are definitely almost always in a happier work environment. Every time they do a survey for, are you happy on your job? Something like 75 to 80% of the people working in a small business, and I'm defining small business as less than 50 people or less than 25 people.
Mhm.
Government counts it as less than 500 people, so you know what kind of level they're looking at. But you compare that to somebody working in a large corporation. Generally, the large corporations, less than 20% of the people are happy with their job. Small business, 75 to 80% tend to be happy with their job.
Mhm.
The big corporations will have what look like benefits, but if you define psychological health as part of your benefit, psychological health affects your physical health, it affects your family life. We should put way more value on our psychological health because small business is where you are happier.
For sure. For sure. I would encourage everybody to have some sort of side gig
Yes,
where you're adding back value to your community,
yes.
wherever your community exists. So, Fran, let me ask you, do you do
Mhm.
coaching per se, or are you strictly an author?
I am primarily an author. I give free advice to anybody who stands still near me too long. Ask my daughters. They'll say, yes, she'll happily give advice to anybody. I have given advice on a strictly personal level, but
Hmm.
I don't do professional coaching as such. One reason I like doing podcast is I like to share the message that it is easier to succeed in small business than most people think. But it's also more work than most people think. And it's almost never a quick road to riches.
Yeah, I
It using the gardening, it's more like planting seeds and taking care of that seed than it is like winning a lottery. But then it lasts longer too because the majority of people who win the lotteries big within a few years
yeah.
are worse off than they were before. In fact, they're much worse off because
It's
they
like
go.
the glacier analogy or the iceberg analogy. You see all these people that have made it big on the, but they're just at the very top. You don't see how much work went into the base moving forward. And a really good example of that is Tony Robbins. I'm old enough to remember Tony Robbins when he was Anthony Robbins, when he had just written that book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I'd actually gone to one of his seminars when there were only 50 people in the room, because I lived in San Diego at the time, back in the 80s. Um, and he started out talking about Mother Teresa and a gentleman named Captain Steve Coffey, who was my neighbor in Hawaii.
Wow.
He was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 7 years. I
Mm-hmm.
knew his sons really well, and it was just like, yeah. I don't know where you're going with this, buddy, but he was borrowing authority from other people, which
Mm-hmm.
at the time bothered me a lot. But he's really expanded his reach and his empire. But when I first met him, this is just to illustrate that, nobody starts out at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a base and everybody learns from somebody else. Nobody just shows up one day with all the answers.
Really? Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
it's not like you're not likely to win the lottery starting a business. But if you take advice from people who have been there, been where you want to go, you're much more likely to get to that place that you want to be.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can even, surpass them
Yes.
in what they're doing.
Well, that's part of setting goals. And when you've set your goal for how can I help, how can I use my talents and my personality to help as many people as possible, you're probably going to pick the right goal and method for you yourself. But I did get a kick out of Tony Robbins, Anthony Robbins. When he first got started, he was very honest about the hole he had gotten into before he wised up.
Mhm.
And I liked reading about how he was doing dishes in his bathtub because he didn't have a sink big enough otherwise, to show how pathetic his little apartment was. And sometimes we do have to sink before we can really see the world accurately.
Mhm.
Like I thought I had it all figured out, was doing great. Then in 2008, when I realized all at once I had made multiple mistakes, and I picked starting in the worst recession that our local area had had in 50 years to have my wake up moment. I would like to think I could have been smart enough to have had the wake up moment when I had more money to do it with, but I didn't. But that is such
You
a
know,
common thing.
it's part of the experience that we're here to have.
Yes,
And,
it is.
we can be mad that these things
Mm-hmm.
happen to me, but they
Mm-hmm.
really happen for us.
Yes,
Everything happens for us. And it might suck going through it, but you get a story,
absolutely.
if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Earlier, we opened the door to the idea that clarity can't be forced. And for
Mm-hmm.
someone who's listening who feels overwhelmed right now, what's the first small shift they can make to slow down and reconnect with purpose and allow for that clarity to emerge?
I would personally recommend looking back at one point in your life when you helped someone in a way that nobody else knows about, not even that person. And if you can't find such a moment, look to do it right now. It doesn't have to be a big thing at all, just a tiny thing. Like the winter of 2008, I was living alone at that point in time. My health wasn't that good. We had lots of snow plow, or huge amounts of snow. And all of a sudden, like somebody, I had no idea who, was using their snowplow to keep my driveway clear. And it wasn't until the end of winter I finally was able to figure out who it was because they usually made a point of doing it after I'd gone to sleep at night. Uh, that went in that category. It can be just raking somebody's leaves. In other words, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but find something to do secretly for somebody else. Because when we give of ourselves, that tells our subconscious, you have more than enough because you can give. And once you know you can give, you suddenly say, I have resources I didn't know I had. And that coming from a feeling of abundance means you can find some way to live. You may have to sell everything you have and start over again elsewhere. So if you have to, but you know you have
New
something
adventure.
with absolutely a new adventure, but you know you have more than you need because you are able to do something for somebody else. And then along the way, give away smiles, they're free, and find something to be thankful for.
Yep.
However little it is, however big it is, find a reason to be thankful. And if you think you have no reason at all, you're just not using your imagination. Even if it's, say, I have this happy memory, like you might remember a favorite birthday party. You might remember a favorite Christmas. You might remember 4th of July and when the sparklers were extra bright. But say, I have this happy memory. I am thankful I have it.
So,
So,
where can people find you, Fran?
they can find my book at frantabor.frantabor.com, frantabor.com. And you can get my book, which is a secret how to compete against Walmart and the internet. And that is available online for free to your listeners because your listeners are the type of people that I genuinely want to succeed either in their side hustle or in their own small business, or if they're just thinking about doing anything for themselves or helping others. And we as entrepreneurs need to help each other. We can help each other grow more by helping each other than we ever can by knocking each other down.
I could not agree with you more. I really appreciate you coming and joining me today.
And also, listeners, uh, if you enjoy any of Jill's broadcasts that you have listened to in the past, if you didn't give her a thumbs up or a 5-star rating, go back, give her that high rating because that is how other people are going to be able to hear her and enjoy her. So please give Jill that high rating. She earned it, and she will just help that many more people when you do that.
Thank you, Fran. That's really nice of you. It's very generous. It's a wonderful gift when my guests ask my listeners to do that for us.
Well, you earn it.
Oh, thank you. You can learn more about Fran and get her book, shh, it's a secret, by visiting frantabor.com. Thank you all for joining us today. If you're ready to amplify your voice, monetize your mission, and start attracting premium clients, your next step is simple. Head to thecoachesalchemist.com and schedule your free client acquisition audit. Join us for our next episode as we share what others are doing to raise the global frequency. And remember, change begins with you. You have all the power to change the world. Start today and get visible.